Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? Let me get over here and make sure that this is muted. I hope you are all having an amazing day. If you would, please smash that like button and share this out. Let everybody know that Parapalooza is underway. We have an awesome lineup for you guys. So I'm going to let a few more people come in real quick before I start explaining a few things, and then we'll get going. Hello, Jenny. Hi, Debbie. Hello, Sunflare. Hello, Tui. Hi, Therese. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Mariah. So if everybody will let all your friends know that we are live, and I am so excited to be hosting this year's Parapalooza. It's exciting. We have an amazing lineup for you guys for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So make sure you're not only checking out your favorite YouTubers that are going to be on here, but also check out everyone, because there's going to be something for everyone, and you might find out something that you didn't already know. So hello, Papa Joey. How are you? So our first guest today is someone I've become fascinated with. Not just her in general, but all of her books. Hello, Michelle. She is an amazing author. She has a bunch of books out, a bunch of books. We're going to find out exactly how many here in a few. But Debbie actually introduced me to Tui Snider. She is an author, and I do have one of her books right here, and it's gospel to me. I love this thing. It has helped us find so many different places that we had no clue were even around us. So I am excited to introduce Tui to you. Let's bring her. Hello, Tui.
Hi. I was just sitting there like leaning in, listening to
I'm gonna make you bigger so everybody can see you.
Okay. You know, that book, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. And many thanks to Debbie McWaters, who is here. She is so nice, and
She is.
And she's really great because, you know, I don't always get online and do like the fun stuff as much as I should. And so
Right.
she sends me links like, oh, you got to check out this person's video, check out that person's video. And it's so helpful. If it's like an hour-long video, she'll go into minute 32. I think you might like this.
She is great with that. She is. Have
really,
that link in Paranormal Gateway.
Yeah, she's just so nice. Oh, Scott's here. He's super nice. Everybody, if you're into the paranormal, you need to follow his YouTube channel, Paranormal Gateway Paratalk. Now, I met him through my newsletter, and he sent me, told me about Centralia, Pennsylvania, and some cool stuff, because I do a weekly show about cemeteries. But he has got some really interesting guests lined up. He's got a show going on Fridays. I usually have to catch the replay because Friday night's kind of date night for me and my hubby, you know. Yeah, but I'm sure our neighbors cringe because for date night this last year, it's been us singing karaoke in the backyard a lot of times. So yeah,
I understand that.
Our poor neighbors. I'm sure we've all been doing a lot of things like that. I should mention there was a guy who, when the pandemic first started and we were first shut down, in my neighborhood, I don't know who this person is, girl or guy, but they started learning how to play the bagpipes, which I know a lot of people hate. I actually like bagpipes. I mean, I got Scottish. I know I'm weird. I got Scottish ancestry, but I must say he was kind of cringy at first. You know, but you know, no one starts off good, right? At anything. Right. And I gotta say, I was out weeding the other day, and I heard the bagpipes again, and I'm like, this guy's gotten good. And bagpipes belong outdoors. That's what they're all about. You don't want that in the house, you know. So it was kind of cool.
Exactly.
So yes, Scott. I know Scott's great. You guys got to get on his show. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Hey, thank you for the shout out.
Oh yeah, no problem, buddy. I don't know. I'm looking. What do I know here? Oh, go ahead. Sorry,
I am. I'm definitely going to be getting some more of your books because I love the whole Texas thing anyway. But these are definitely so easy to use, and you make it to where you even give directions to the places. And if there's not directions, you give makeshift directions. And just whatever you can.
And I don't put places in there that you can't go to, because
Right.
doesn't that drive you nuts? There's
Yes.
actually a haunted hot dog stand in Texas that I was reading about. And I spent like 2 days looking into it, trying to figure out how to go there. Finally went on Google Maps and I was like, there's like a parking lot that you can't even, it's been totally closed off to the public. I'm like, don't
Right.
tease me like that, people.
Exactly. And that is because Texas is such a huge state, for
Mhm.
one. So driving anywhere to get to a lot of these places, sometimes you're going 4 and 5 hours just to find out that
Oh,
the
yeah.
place is closed, or you are not allowed to get into it, or
Yeah. And if you want to do a paranormal investigation and then you show up at this cool place and like you realize, oh, this is private property. I can't do this with, this would be either rude or illegal. Wow, you've
right.
just wasted your whole day driving. And yeah, I mean, I've lived in countries smaller than Texas. I mean, Texas is big.
Exactly. Yes. So I definitely appreciate the fact that you go out of your way to make sure that there's directions and stuff like that in it.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
started as a travel writer, so every book I write ends up being slightly a travel book. Like even my true crime book about Texas, I gave directions so you could visit certain areas involved in the history, and which is fun because sometimes you read that book and you're like, oh, we're going to drive through the town where this crime happened. So I kind
Right.
of made it at the back. I'm like, sorry, guys, not really sorry, not sorry, but I always, I mean, my books, you can enjoy them, armchair travel. Like I do. My first fan letter actually came from a street magician living in Paris, but he's fascinated by Texas because, like, Texas is weird, and so like he's never been here. So I mean, I don't. He's going to use the directions, but I mean, so the books can still be. I try to make them like enjoyable if you're never going to come to Texas, but if you are, man, you can go and have a little adventure because I think
Exactly.
I think that's a fun thing to do. You can just have so much fun.
So how many books have you written?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, there are some books I've written that will never see the light of day that are so horrible when I was learning, because I've been, wanted to be a published writer ever since I was a little kid. And so, like it's like the guy learning the bagpipes. You kind of start where you are. And it's a good thing I didn't publish those. I kind of knew they were bad. But I have at least 11 that are just me that I've done. And then I have some books that I've done that I've been part of anthologies. So 5 or 6 of those probably. But I think the ones that I can just say are books that I've written straight up are about, 11 or 12. God, I'm getting a little wild here.
That's amazing. And what got you into? Have you always wanted to write books, or was it just something that you?
Yeah, when I was a little kid, I wrote a story in like second grade about third grade, whatever. I was a little kid. I wrote a story about a hard boiled egg, and like the class loved it so much they wanted a sequel. And that's when I thought, this is what I want to do for a living. Of course, it took a long time, and then I started out as a travel writer because I was just blogging, and a magazine editor saw something I blogged and said, "Oh, would you like to write for a magazine, travel articles?" And when people hear travel writer, they think that because the glamorous idea of it is that somehow you get a jet, you're
Right.
flying out of town, you're going to Timbuktu every other weekend. The reality of it is most travel guides want people who live in the area because you're going to know it better. And so,
Exactly.
and they don't generally, you can get some stuff paid, and I've been paid to stay at places and write about them later, but it's not like you'd think. But I love writing about wherever I happen to be. And since I fell in love with a Texan and I moved down here, then I fell in love with Texas
Yeah.
after, and I realized this place has got so much crazy history. Like my first book is just all about the weird things. It's just a weird travel guide. It's called Unexpected Texas, because it
Yeah.
was all, and it's all the stuff that like when I would talk to magazine editors and be like, "Can I write a story about the Salt Palace?" And they'd be like, "What? No, write about the Texas cliches." And I'm like, "Oh man, there's so many weird things down here." So I ended up with a whole folder of weird stuff, places you can go to, and they're all very family friendly too. And you're usually on a budget when you got your kids and everything. So this is a very like affordable. It's not the luxury. Yes, go to this 5-star restaurant and then get this $400 an hour massage. I can't afford that. How can I write about
Right.
that? But I just think there's a lot of fun to be found right around you. And so I think we spend so much time on our phones and on our screens. It's like you get a book like this, or even the Paranormal Texas. I got a letter from not a well, email from a lady who said that her nephews visited her during spring break, and she got them interested in history by taking them around, like, let's go to this small town, and visit the haunted well or whatever. And so her kids, she kind of tricked them into getting interested in history. And I was like, wasn't that cool?
That is awesome. And yeah, I can say that too, because there are so many places just in the book that I have that I didn't even know existed. And some of them are an hour from me.
Isn't that nice? Yeah. And these are mostly, I've got to say, mostly North Texas oriented books. When I first moved down here, my husband had a business, so we could only really take road trips together on his weekends. And so everything was kind of like a day's drive within the whole Dallas-Fort Worth area, with a stretch all the way over to East Texas for Jefferson, because that's the coolest town ever. I love that town. Or like maybe over to West Texas a little bit. So there's a whole lot of Texas. Sometimes people get mad at me and they're like, you didn't cover the whole state. But as we said, it's a pretty darn big state.
A huge book.
yeah. And I mean, I'm not against writing more. Any excuse to explore more. And now, he's semi-retired, so it's got more time to maybe explore a little farther afield.
Exactly. Now, in all your research of Texas, what has been the strangest thing that you have come across?
Oh boy. Well, there's a lot of them. Do you want a paranormal one, since this is a parapalooza? I'll do a straight.
That would work.
I would think one of the strangest things I came across was I went, and I even have a YouTube video about this if anyone wants to see. I have a playlist, I think, about haunted places, something like that. You'll get the idea. But it's, the Old Park Hotel down in Ballinger, Texas. I was there with two, like a professional paranormal group, Becky Vickers, who does the Goatman's Bridge tours. She's wonderful, by the way. And very knowledgeable. She's done a lot of research. And when you go on one thing I discovered kind of the hard way is when and I just never thought about it, when you go on a paranormal investigation, you really need to vet the group first, because my very first professional paranormal investigation was with this group who they were drinking heavily, smoking wacky tobacco, running around making noise. I was like, how am I going to know if anything's going on? I was there like, oh, I'm so excited. I had a chair and a big iced espresso. I was going to be up all night. I had my recorder, to get EVPs. And they abandoned me and my friend there at 1 a.m. Like one by one, they either just got bored or whatever, wandered off. One guy ran screaming out of the house. I still don't know what happened to him. And it was a scary building too. So back to the Ballinger Hotel. That place it's owned by Dan LaFave and his wife. I forgot her name. I haven't met her. I got to meet Dan the day we were there. He really explains. He walks you through the building. He tells you where all the hot spots are. And that place was so active. So like Becky and her team, when you're with a professional team, it takes them like an hour or so to set everything up. And so they're taping down wires and they're getting a central area, and everybody knows where everybody is at all times, so that if you hear something strange, oh, nobody's in that room, let's go investigate. So I was just staying out of their hair, and first thing that happens, we heard like the door slam and a man going, Alan, like calling a name out, and we thought, oh, who's that? I thought it was Dan had come back. I go running into the front hall. Nobody's there. The door is locked. You can't get in from the outside. So that place was like, it was ready. We weren't even ready to start experiencing things. But here's the weird thing. We kind of encountered, I don't know what to call it, like a mimic or a doppelganger. There was something impersonating me all night. And I'd never encountered this before. In fact, I don't know if this happens to anybody else, but usually whenever I kind of, in my head, I'm not very judgmental in general, but every now and then I'll hear something like doppelgangers and I'm like, oh, that's not really something that ever happens. That's just like something that back a long time ago, before they had photos, you just see someone with dark hair and a goofy hat on, you'd think that's me, but we could look quite different. So I just kind of I had just mentioned that to someone, not like the doppelgangers had come up, and like I had been like, oh, I don't know about that, kind of rolled my eyes. For some reason, whenever I do that, it seems like the universe conspires to humble me and make me experience. Oh, she doesn't believe in doppelganger. We're going to show her.
Yeah, let's
So,
prove it.
yeah. So this was to me one of the weirder experiences I had. So that I was staying out of their way. Everybody was downstairs taping things, and I was like, okay, I'll just go up here where Dan says he gets EVPs a lot, and I love like a real good Class A, clear as a bell EVP. And we'd gotten one already when we were with him. He goes, I get a lot of EVPs here, and he says something, and we hear a guy, speaking. It was crazy. So I was up there, and I had my tape recorder, and I said something like, I just wonder if I have any company up here. And then I'm counting to 10 in my head. And as I'm counting to 10, I hear my friend Greg call from downstairs, Tui, are you singing? And I'm like, no, I'm not singing. And he goes, I swear you were singing. And I said, no, I have a sing-song voice. He goes, it was not your voice. It was, someone singing. I'm like, whatever. Well, what I didn't know was that Becky had already put a tape recorder on the table next to me. And on her tape recorder, okay, I just wondered if I had any company up here. On mine, nothing. On hers, you hear me go, I just wonder if I had any company up here. And then you hear me go, doot, 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 doot. And even to me, it sounds exactly like me. I know, that weird. And, it was so cute because Becky was driving home the next day and we're all really tired and she was listening back to everything and she she missed her exit as soon as that happened and she texted us. She was like, I gotta pull over. What? I'm gonna send this to you. I still was suspicious until I heard it. And then I'm like, Becky, that sounds exactly like me. So then when I was listening back through my stuff, there was a moment later that night where Greg, once again, he goes, Tui, where you at? I'm like, I'm over here. And he goes, that's weird because I just saw you walk by the door. Wow. Same hat, same outfit, looked just like you. And I just blew it off. But when I looked back on my notes and we added everything up, I was like, that is so weird. There was something imitating me that night. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what that is. But I had to kind of, it humbled me a little because I had been sort of making fun of the idea of doppelgangers before that.
Right. So, yeah. I definitely, there's been plenty of times where I've listened to people doing spirit box or something like that, and it sounds exactly like them. Wow. But you can clearly see they're not talking and stuff. So, yeah, I definitely believe that happens.
I've been hearing more and more about it. To me, it was a first. It was just a little I don't even know what to make of that. It was very strange. So it was fun though, and I recommend to anybody if they can go to the Old Park Hotel. That's a really good one. Oh yeah, I think I have that in my book, don't I? Yeah, I do.
Yes, it is, and it's on my list definitely.
Oh yeah, I love it.
So through all the travels that you've done and stuff like that throughout, and it not even just in Texas, anywhere else that you may have gone, is there any places that you have said, I am not going back here? This place is too crazy for me.
I'm not going back here. No, not yet. I have not really, the scary experiences I've had with the paranormal in my life have been when I was not looking for anything to happen. But the places I've gone to, and something about, you're with a team, it just feels so much safer. I haven't had a place where I felt like I was never going to go back. But I private experiences I've had that I, haven't shared in my books, but I think I've shared in a couple anthologies. I've had some experiences where, I guess so. There isn't any place I wouldn't go back because I've been fortunate. I have had the experience of bringing something home with me a couple times, and that was actually the one of the times it happened was after I had helped clean my mother-in-law's house out after she passed away. And one of the weird things she had in her possession was she had a 2,000-year-old mummy's head.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was a really neat lady. I say in the next thing, she was a voodoo priestess. No, I'm kidding. There's nothing like that. She was just a super interesting, well-traveled lady, very glamorous, very sweet. And she had all sorts, she traveled the world, like I said. She had all sorts of knickknacks from all around the world. Many of them are very old. I did not touch that mummy's head at all. It kind of, creeped me out. And so one of her sons found, I think, a museum for it. It's a whole saga that mummy's head had, actually. But yeah, when I came home after that trip, and I had handled pretty much all of her belongings and helped put them in bags, and there were things that she'd been to Egypt several times, and yeah, she just had amazing things. So I came home and I started getting a weird symptom. And for me, and this has happened repeatedly in my life now that I look back on it, when something follows me home that isn't so nice exactly, I'm not saying demons. I think that word gets bandied about too much. I kind of
Yes.
think that there's a whole range, just like there's a whole range of animals in the world. I think there's a whole range of non-body centric consciousness out there too, and some of them are like, you get a flea or a tick, it's not something that's pleasant. But yeah, so what happens to me, and it's my big, is I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll feel clammy. I'll have like a cold sweat, and I won't know why it is, and sometimes even run a slight temperature. So I think I'm sick. But I also wake up kind of like night terrors a lot of times.
Right.
This will be happening. I'm like, what's going on? Did I drink too much coffee? I never put the dots together, even though it's the same thing. And then eventually I do. But so this time I was like, wow, I wonder why. I guess I got really run down. I made an appointment with my doctor, but it was going to be, since it wasn't too bad of an illness, it was going to be like a week before I could see him. Meanwhile, my friend came, who's she was just coming through town, was going to spend the night with us. And we had sat down and made her coffee. And she just looks at me and she goes, you know what, honey, I think you've got a boogie. And I'm like, what? And she's very sensitive. And she goes, I just think, have you been around a bunch of old stuff? Have you been to an antique store lately? And I'm like, because I hadn't even gotten into the whole, I'm like, well, yeah, kinda. I mean, not a store, but yeah, I was handling all sorts of stuff. She goes, yeah, I think you just something a little hitchhiked with you. Oh, the other thing was my neck was feeling really weird. Like it was like, so she just very gifted person came over, and I'm like, well, it can't hurt. She goes, I said, I've got a doctor appointment because I'm not feeling well and all this other stuff that's going on. She goes, well, let's see how you feel after this. And she came over and she kind of did a little thing, and we just like banished it. Basically, she did, and then I saged and all this that, and but what was weird was my neck popped all of a sudden. I'm like, oh, could that have been related? The sweats went away. My temperature returned to normal within like by the afternoon, by the evening. I'm like, I don't have the low grade fever and sweats. And I'm like, when I've had that before is when I've had some other experiences. And when I start to slack on my like spiritual hygiene, where you're not,
Mhm.
it's kind of like flossing your teeth. You're supposed to do it, and then you just kind of quit doing it, and then suddenly you
Right.
realize, oh, yeah. So that was an experience I had where I brought something home with me, and that was unpleasant. Now I'm much more. I try to be much more aware of that kind of stuff.
Right. Now, I've been doing some research, not only
Mhm.
because I do love your books and I love your personality and everything. You're always so bubbly and everything. But one of the favorite things that I have found while doing some research is um,
My criminal
where,
record, yeah, my
well, yeah,
vast. I know, guys. You're gonna.
is where you say, I used to write fiction, but then I moved to Texas. That has got to be one of my favorite quotes that is on there. I absolutely love it. So, did you write books from the other places that you have been? Do you have books about any other states?
I don't. I actually grew up between, I lived in Virginia till I was 10, and then I moved to Washington State and lived there through high school. And then I was lucky I got to spend a little time in Belgium and Italy, which was cool. But I started writing for magazines when I was living in Italy for a little bit. And I'd always wanted to write a book. I just didn't know how. It was more like stubbornness when I couldn't I started on my blog sharing all the weird things that I was finding. And
Right.
because I had editors tell me no one's going to be interested in this stuff. But then they were like, native Texans were telling me like, oh, this is interesting stuff. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to self-publish a book and see if anything happens. And yeah, it did really well. It went to #1 on DFW Travel like within 24 hours, and people
Wow.
liked it. And I'm like, you know what, I think I'm just going to do this. So that's when I started writing books. And now I just can't stop writing books because I love the feedback you get from writing books, and I love that they can take people on adventures. It's just so fun. Yeah, yeah, what I say, I used to write fiction, but then I moved to Texas. I mean, I used to write, I still write songs and stuff like that, and poems and stuff. I don't always share those, but I don't have time to really explore my fiction ideas now because I've got so many a backlog of like true nonfiction things. Texas is just fascinating. It's full of really quirky history.
It definitely is. And another thing I love about your books is your personality comes through. Just reading it, and every now and then you put in just like these little jokes or little tidbits of something. So your personality really does come through. Where can everybody find your books?
Oh, you can find my books. Just go to Amazon and type Tui Snider. Or you can go to my website, which is just my name, tuisnider.com. Don't add any Y's in there. It's all I's, Tui Snider. And if you go to my website, too, you can get a free book. If you sign in exchange for signing up for my newsletter. It's one of those like freebies you get. Of course, you can always unsubscribe too. But I send out a newsletter every Sunday. And it's kind of it's fun because the little booklet that I give out is it's a guide to the symbolic meaning of hands when you see them in historic cemeteries. And I made it because that's how I got my husband interested in cemetery symbols, was I started explaining what the different hands meant. And then he started going like, hey, do you have this hand? Do you have that hand? And I realized that's a good way to get people interested in that, because a lot of times one person's interested in going into a historic cemetery and their partner's kind of like, why are we going into this creepy old historic cemetery? And then once they go in there with them and they start looking for the hands, they start realizing, oh, there's a whole interesting side to it I didn't realize. And so this can be kind of a way to get people interested. So so number one, go to Amazon for my books, or go to my website. You can find a link to my books there too, and you can get my free book there as well.
And the website and Tui's YouTube channel are all down in the description, so make sure you grab those up before you leave here today. Speaking of the cemeteries, do you have a favorite cemetery that you have been to, or are they all the same? Or
Oh, no, they're varied. Oh my gosh, I have a lot of favorite cemeteries. I really love Thurber Cemetery in West Texas. That's a ghost town. Population is 6, I think, right now. It has 2 restaurants, which I think is hilarious. You can grab a bite. It's on your way to Abilene. There's that big smokestack there. It's got all this really fascinating history. And the reason I love that cemetery is they have plaques that tell you things about the people there. So you can like, oh, this person was from Poland and this or that. And you'll see, because it was a coal mining town, you will see names in Italian and maybe Polish and, not just English. So it's quite interesting. And I've heard people get EVPs in other languages there. So very fascinating. Another one I love in Texas, I love, well, there's just so many. There's one over, now I'm forgetting the name, Rose Hill, and it has 2 oil wells in it, which I thought was hilarious. It was called the richest cemetery in the world for a long time. Yeah, I was like, how Texan is that to have oil wells in your... and then, of course, I love Highgate in London. It's a really gorgeous one. It's been featured in a lot of movies. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm having someone come on. She's getting her PhD in horror movies. Her name is Icy Sedgwick, and she's going to be on my YouTube show. I do a YouTube show on Tuesdays called Tombstone Tuesdays, and she's going to talk about cemeteries in movies. And since she's getting her PhD in this whole thing, it should be really interesting, and I'm sure Highgate will come up. They have a famous vampire associated with them. It's just this amazing garden cemetery. You could just get happily lost in there. But it's hard to say. I have so many favorites. And then this time of year, I have to say, if there is anyone else here in Texas, this is a good time to visit cemeteries this month and the next, because, you want to get some nice bluebonnet pictures.
Oh, yeah.
But, people go to the highway and then they pull off at the side of the highway. They have cars there. And, it's much prettier if you just go to a historic cemetery. No one's, it's all peaceful, and you will see a lot of Indian paintbrush and bluebonnets. It's a much nicer, that's my tip for Texans. in general, this is a good time of year to go. I think any time's a good time of year to go to a cemetery, but spring is a good time of year.
It definitely is. And the cemeteries here are beautiful. I love the older
Yeah.
headstones, stuff like that. A lot of them are not made like they used to be. Um, and I think the older ones are prettier. I
Oh,
mean,
for sure. There
doesn't
was a
matter how
big,
old they are, they're still beautiful.
yeah, because after the Great Depression, people had to move to find work, and so they weren't there. Like people used to just grow up and die in one town, and so the cemeteries near you really were once a even here in Texas, there are still ones that do this. They'll have their annual homecoming day or decoration day, they call it, and they'll have a big picnic in the cemetery, and they'll clean it all up. And it's sort of like they treat their plots the way we treat our yards. You know, you plant different things, and
Right.
everyone treats their yards like that. But when people after the Great Depression, people kind of had to move, and they weren't able to just go home that way so easily. Then these private cemeteries came in, and that's when you get the ones that I find a little boring, where they only allow a flat marker so that a lawnmower
Right.
can go right over it, and you're not allowed to grow plants and trees at your plot anymore. It's not like your own little lawn, and the whole like 100 years ago, people and beyond that, people used to you could be in your 20s, and if you got a big chunk of change, you'd be like, oh, I'm gonna invest in a really cool headstone right now or a monument. No one really thinks that way. Most of the time it's our relatives who kind of get stuck going, oh, I got to get a headstone for a relative
Right.
now. But people planned ahead, and they made them really cool and interesting. There are some fascinating, oh, do I have a postcard like this one? I have a Patreon page, and I send out postcards to my Patreon supporters, and this is one I sent out this month. It's that that grave there at the top, that's in Louisiana. And if you look here, it's right there. Oh, pardon my lovely manicure. I was gardening earlier. Those rusty doors there, they open up, and the woman who commissioned this whole thing, she would go inside there and spend hours reading the Bible and knitting beside the caskets for her husband and her son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that was not considered, that was just considered communing with the dead. That wasn't considered as spooky as we find it weird. The
Right.
Victorian era, it was just kind of like, that's something you might have done. But the other thing is that guy up on the top, that's a statue of her husband, and he's holding their wedding decree in his left hand because the gossip mongers were spreading tales about her that she was a floozy and they weren't officially married, and so she had to commission that.
Oh,
So, and he's
right.
looking downtown, the statue's looking downtown, giving him this stink eye, and he's holding the decree. So it's kind of
That is
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's very, very, very creative.
I know, it was one of the most unique. I'm like, wow, that's really something.
Guys in the chat, thank y'all for being here. If you have any questions for Tui, please type them in all caps so we can make sure we don't miss them. I appreciate you all being here to support Tui.
Yeah,
And
thanks,
make sure you
guys.
grab those links down there in the description. So do you have, I know you have a lot of books, but what has been the funnest one for you to do, like to research, to
Oh, that's a good question. I do them so differently. So I did one. Reedy Press had me do this one. 100 things to do in the Dallas Fort Worth before you die, and
Mhm.
to come up with my list of 100 things, I asked my newsletter readers for advice, what they thought should go on a bucket list. And that really changed my idea of what a bucket list is. Because I always thought of a bucket list as like, something you do once. I'm going to skydive or something, not something
Right.
you do. But the things that they suggested were all things that are like, I went here as a kid. I took my kids here when they were little, and now I take my grandkids there. So there's some really weird restaurants and things that are just kind of quirky. And so it was a fun one. Like I crowdsourced it a lot. I got tons of information. This one was super fun. This is like a travel guide to really interesting historic graves all throughout Texas and 6 feet under Texas. So that one I had a blast because it just learned so much, and I got to, I don't know, I just thought those were all really interesting places. I love any excuse to go out and explore something. So they're all, for me, the research behind the books is a big reason that I find them so fun. This one's kind of ongoing. I mean, I did make a book. This isn't so much about Texas. You can use it anywhere. It's called Understanding Cemetery Symbols, and it's meant to just help be a guide. And, I think a lot of times, even if you just do paranormal research and you don't think you're that interested in cemeteries, a lot of times you end up in a cemetery. And a lot of a person's story, these from 100 years ago, is expressed in the symbols that they have on their headstone. And so by knowing what they mean, it can really enrich, make it a little more fun for you. And this is a topic, I guess, of all the topics I explore, this one's fun because you never feel like you know it all. There's always I'm always learning more. And this one I get the most, once a week at least I get somebody emails me a symbol and, wants to know what it is. And so there's some that I'm like, I got to add that to the book next time. Sometimes if I know what it is, I tell them right away because there's certain symbols that people ask about a lot. Other ones I'm like, wow, I don't know what this is. I love it. I don't know. It's something more to research. It keeps it fun.
Yeah, I definitely need to get that one because I'm always finding, especially in these older cemeteries, stuff, and we're always saying in our videos, I wonder what that means.
Oh, you should tag me sometime. Yeah, I would love. I could. Sometimes Deb tags me. She goes, they wondered what this meant. So I'll go at 13 minutes in. I'm like, oh, that means they were a member of the Royal Archmasons or something. And to me, it's really fun. I'm like, I like to be helpful when I can.
And speaking of Debbie, she has a question for you. She says, what is the next place you are looking forward to visiting?
Ooh, what is the next place I'm looking forward to visiting? I have a lot of them because I had, last year I had planned a trip to go up the Eastern Seaboard and I wanted to see Bonaventure Cemetery. We had an Airbnb that had a tree house and I was going to spend like a week in Savannah and just go all through, see all those interesting. I read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. I was just all primed to be all Savannah-fied and check it out. And then, I want to go up. I want to go to Boston. I want to see Edgar Allan Poe's grave. There's a whole bunch of graves on the East Coast I'd like to see. Yes. But I haven't officially planned a trip yet. I mean, I do a lot of, daydream planning. Planning is part of the fun with travel, even if you don't get to go. So at this point, I don't know. Because for my birthday, we were going to do something and I forget why we didn't. And so my husband owes me a little road trip. So we need one here soon.
There you go. So is there plans for a new book coming out?
Oh, I've got several. I've always got several books on the going at once. I have one about that I've been working on. I actually gave a talk at the International UFO Congress about it because in 1897 in Texas, there was just a rash of airship sightings. And for the past 10 years now, I've been researching and I love going into newspaper archives, really trying to find out what people were reporting about those airships. They were like UFOs in 1897. And about 15 minutes away from where I live, there's a body buried that they say was from an airship and that it was not of this world. So essentially an alien grave. I do have a video on my couple of videos about that on my YouTube if anyone wants to see.
I actually have a video on our channel about that as well. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Yes. So isn't that a crazy tale? I love it. That's one of those, see, I used to write fiction, but then I moved to Texas because come on. What do you mean?
One of the funnest videos we've done in a bit.
I will have to check that out. Yeah, I love that. It is so, and the first time I visited it, shortly after, someone stole the headstone, which is really annoying. Now they got the big rock there, which is better than nothing. But I was like, really, people, why steal it? Exactly. I don't care, these headstone stealers, they bug me. But I am writing another book that it's different. It's a memoir. It's about, and it's hopefully humorous. Because that's how I cope with everything. But it's about my father-in-law living with us when he had dementia. And so many funny things happened. I started sharing them on Facebook. And I never meant to write a book about him. But my way of coping with things is to write them down and then try and make them funny too. And, that's just how I deal with life. And I ended up with so much stuff that finally, after he passed away, I finally realized, maybe I might have accidentally written a book about him. And so now I'm going through it and reliving it and laughing and going, yeah, maybe this will help someone else. Because there's so much I didn't know about what it means to be a caregiver. It's so strange because you don't want to overstep. It's a lot of weird things. Suddenly they're like the kid and you're trying to be an adult to them. And you're like, I don't know. It's just, and crazy things happen. So, and he was a sweet man. So that's another one.
That V says, I'm from Texas. Thank you for all the interesting info.
Oh, great. Yeah, and go to, if you want more advice or want more advice, inspiration, just check out some of the videos on my channel. There's some places you might want to visit. You'd be like, oh yeah, I've heard of this place,
Yes,
or I go there.
I can show you I have one of Tui's books, and I can show you,
Yay!
this is all
Oh,
bookmarked and everything, where
oh, I love that.
we have so many places that we've already been to because of this book.
I make them this size too because I want them to be able to fit in your glove box or your purse. You know.
They're perfect.
I know. I had a gal. She showed up at one of my signings, and she brought up the most beat up version of my Cemetery Symbols book. I mean, it had it had like coffee splatters and dirt all over. And she was like, "I'm so embarrassed, but would you sign this?" And I'm like, you were exactly who I was picturing when I wrote it. Like because she goes, I travel for work, and every time I see a cemetery sign now, I pull over, and then if I want to know what something means, I look it up in here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you were the person when I was writing this book, I was picturing, like, I hope it gets somebody out on an adventure, and then they see some stuff, and so yeah.
Well, hopefully, I'll be able to get with you one day and have you sign my book and the ones that I do plan on purchasing in the future. Thank you, Twinkie. She's telling everybody to butter your buns. That's just something we say instead of the subscribe. We say that.
I like that.
Yeah, it is sad, V, that people do steal headstones and they do break them and tear them up and
weird vandalism. And it isn't always just kids. I kind of hate it when people just immediately assume that the only jerks in the world are just kids. Quite often it's some disgruntled, wacky adult.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it is just kids, but it isn't always. There's jerks come in all flavors.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So is there anything in specific that you want anyone to know about your channel, about you?
Oh, I don't know. I do a weekly show about called Tombstone Tuesdays, and I've been getting where I interview people, and I've got some really great guests coming along, and I've had some really wonderful guests that make me look like slackers. Like I had Mitch Whittington, who lives in Jefferson. He's got like 35 books out, and Jess Oberding's got 35 books out. I'm like, you guys, wow. Yeah, so check that out. That's been a lot of fun. And I am going to maybe start another one talk. I'm enjoying doing these live streams and interviewing people so much. I might start something on Thursday night. I've got one for April Fool's Day where Greg Bishop, who's a renowned UFO researcher and just really fun person, is going to be on. And we'll be talking about the trickster energy a lot because I figured April Fool's Day, that'll be really fun. But right. I'm hoping to have some other people on there. I know a UFO contactee that I might have on, and some other people, just kind of the more just weird stuff. And I might even have my husband on there because he's a mad scientist, total skeptic. So it's sort of fun to bounce things off of him, but he's really knowledgeable. So I would say just check out my YouTube channel. And if you really want to keep up with me, sign up for my newsletter because that's the main thing. And I do prioritize answering emails with my newsletter people. And I send something out every Sunday to people to let them know what's up.
Definitely go sign up for that newsletter because you're going to find a lot of interesting things. I can't even express how much I found in this book. And a lot of these places, like I said, are 45 minutes away from me an hour, and I never knew they existed.
Oh, so how fun. Yay. I love that.
Something in there for everybody, and they're fun to read too. So even if you're not in Texas, like she said, you're still going to find them interesting.
Yeah, I never want my books to feel like, like even this one, I'm trying to teach you about cemetery symbols. I never, when I write it, I don't want it to be dry. I don't want you to feel like there will be a test later. I try to just, I read all sorts of boring stuff for research. I don't mind. Like I'll read a whole big boring book if I can get one interesting paragraph out of it, just to back things up. But this is for fun. Some people have criticized me like it should be more dry, whatever. It should sound more like professional. I mean, I feel like it's professional, but I'm not trying to. I want you to have a laugh or two, and I want you to feel inspired and not intimidated.
Well, I definitely find it very informational and very professional, but I also find it very fun.
Well, this one was a second edition, and that was the first time I wrote it. I kind of left myself out of it, and readers, I take my readers very seriously. So if you're on my newsletter and you give me advice, I really take your advice. And the advice I kept getting was, we want pictures and we want to hear more of your experiences. So I kind of held back. So I just went ahead and put in more of my own experiences. I didn't go overboard, but I just put in the, ones that I'd had along the way. And then I added photos. So I'm like, okay, that's what you want. That's what you're getting. I'm writing the books for you guys,
Right.
So I'm totally open to suggestions.
Well, I definitely am enjoying this, and I've read it front to back. But anytime we're in a certain area, I go through there and I look and see if that town's in there. Just because, and a couple of times it has been, and I've been like, "Yay, there's something here." So
good.
It's definitely helped me out. So I know you guys are going to enjoy them as well, and I do want to get that symbols book, because that'll help out too when you can actually say what something means on a headstone. Not only does that make you sound a little more professional, but it'll answer any questions we have.
and that is one of those areas too. People tend to make stuff up about what those mean, and that's kind of doing a disservice to your ancestor who took the time to, or maybe you're not related to them, but our everybody's ancestors. Let's not slander the past. Let's figure out what they really wanted us to know about them, rather than make it up like, oh, he was a Satan worshiper, when he's actually trying to let you know that he was in the Independent Order of Odd Fellows or something, or that he was a fireman. I mean, let's find out the truth. That's plenty interesting.
That is awesome. I'm intrigued by a lot of the stuff that they do put on these headstones, but there are a lot of times when I have no clue, and I'm not going to say what I think it is, because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be completely wrong.
Yeah, because we've kind of forgotten that. We don't think, we use emojis and all that now, but we don't think I think we're like a little bit illiterate when it comes to symbolism. I think in the 120 years ago and beyond, they read more poetry. They had more of a symbolic outlook on the world. And I think that's gotten a little, like now, if a modern day headstone has a tractor on it because grandpa drove a tractor or something, it's not that a tractor symbolizes something. So in the past, there was a lot of information that could be packed in this one little symbol, things that we just don't know. So, and then of course there's also the whole aspect of Hollywood. Like whenever we see a star, we're instantly like, oh, that's a pentagram. Whereas, there's a whole different thing with that. It's not, when it's on, I mean, you're not going to be seeing something that's satanic when you're unless it's graffiti, but you're not going to, no one put something on there on their head. So anyway, I'm going far afield. I know we're running out of time, but it's one of those things.
You are good. You're just fine. Rob says that he has been seeing a lot of tree-shaped headphones. Is that right, Rob?
Oh, yeah.
I don't understand what the meaning of that is.
He probably, tree headstones, I bet. Yeah. I wonder if you're down south here, says Michigan. Oh, I wonder, okay, a lot of times those are woodmen of the world headstones, because back in the day, you wanted to belong to as many fraternal orders and secret societies and clubs as you could, because they all had different benefits. And big benefit of being a woodman of the world was, depending on how much money you spent on your policy or membership with them, you would get a headstone. And these woodmen of the world ones are tree stones. But sometimes if it's a woodman of the world, it will either say woodman of the world on it, or modern woodman, or it'll say in Latin, dum tacet clamat. But if it doesn't have any of that on it, it might just be symbolizing the tree of life, because that's what the tree is all about anyway. So it's a tree of life. Especially when you see them little kids' graves, you'll just see a little tiny stump because they've been cut off symbolically. They've been cut short, and then you see these 2 little branches coming off for the mom and dad. And then sometimes you'll see like a little lamb on there to stand for the innocence of the kid, or you just might see that, or a dove, But the tree stone, that's a lot of times it's woodman of the world, and if it's not, then it's just a tree of life as a symbol.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful. They're very eye-catching. I love those, and they come in there's a lot of variety with them, and there are a lot of symbols that are included on them. So,
do you have any events coming up or anything that you'd like to share? Or I know you do some shows or talks, at different places. Do you have anything like that coming up?
I have a couple couple talks coming up, but they're both these private events. One's for university, and so I can't share the link. That's just private.
Right.
And then another one's a cemetery. They're going to be recording me and stuff, and so we'll eventually have a link for that one. Right now, hey, if anyone needs a speaker, I love giving talks. I haven't given an in-person talk for a while now, but this past year I've had a blast doing online conferences. I could talk about the UFOs. That's a fun topic, or cemetery symbols is always fun, or even I have a few that you can see that I did over the past year. If you go to my YouTube channel, I went to Deep Creek Cemetery and walked around there. My husband and I had a picnic, and then I videoed it and did a little thing. So yeah, no, I don't have anything other beyond my Tombstone Tuesdays, and then starting on April 1st, I got that nighttime show. It's kind of my Offbeat and Overlooked, where I explore things outside of the graveyards of the world. So. Do I know about druids, someone's saying?
Druid, yes.
I know druids are associated with trees, but I don't know a lot about them. Yeah, children's graves with the lamb. I see someone asking about that. Yeah, that's a common stand. It's often for children. You will see a lamb and its tail won't be bobbed. And so a lot of times people send me pictures, and after 100 years of sitting outside, the little lamb has become so worn down. They're like, one person was like, "Is this a rat? Why would they have a rat?" Oh, no. I'm like, no. But they can start, they may not look so pristine. Now, one thing that's interesting is if you see a lamb standing up, then that stands for Saint Joseph. But you nearly always see the little lamb, with its legs down, and then the little tail hasn't been bobbed because it's so young, and it stands for, Agnus Dei, the Lamb of God, sacrifice, innocence, all that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff we did not know.
Yeah, really fascinating, fun stuff. Once you start learning it, it's like unraveling a sweater. You're just going to keep going, have fun with it.
Exactly. And I would love to have you on our channel one of these days. You're just a lot of fun to talk to. I could probably sit here and talk to you all day about all this stuff. So if anybody has any real quick questions for Tui, we would love to ask them real quick for you. And guys, make sure you grab them links up.
I see that about that. Yeah, I've only seen a couple standing lambs. I saw one in Puerto Rico, actually. That was the first place I saw a standing lamb. And then I saw one in England too. But it's not a common. Usually, that's when I was like, "Hey, wait, aren't the lambs usually sitting down? I didn't know about that." So, as soon as you see something that doesn't fit, that's when I learn. Like, wait, I thought I knew what this meant. What's going on? More research. Yay!
Exactly. And I know now I'm going to be starting to look a little more closely at a lot of these headstones and stuff, because I do now know that there is a lot more symbols and stuff out there that have meaning.
Exactly. And that's when you start to find. So yeah, people go to my website, download my thing about hands, because that'll suck you in. And once you start looking at one thing, then you realize there is so much more to it. Even me, when I go back to cemeteries that I used to think, a long time ago were just kind of bland, I'm up in my own hometown. I walk in now, I'm like, hey, this is a much more interesting place. So it makes it a lot more interesting once you start learning a little bit about it. Oh yeah, willow trees also for grief. Yeah, that very popular. I see Sandra mentioning willow trees.
Yes.
Someone's asking, what's my oldest dated tombstone I've seen? The oldest burial site I've seen were some Etruscan graves in Tarquinia, Italy, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site now, and they're these weird little mounds. And then these little staircases, you go down into the earth, and those are thousands of years old. Yes. And inside they have little frescoes on the walls showing what they were interested in. Like, did they like fishing, or they liked eating? So that was probably the oldest thing I've ever been to. Oh, I've been to if you want to count the Aztec pyramids down in Mexico City, I've been there once too. But
that'd be amazing.
Those are pretty neat. I got to go there. I was very lucky. The oldest date that actually had a carved date. I've seen some in some cathedrals that were pretty old. I can't, maybe from the 1400s.
Oh, nice.
Hard for me to say. That's a good question.
That is a good question. That is amazing. Well, Tui, thank you so much for being here. We have had so much fun. Everyone, make sure you go and show Tui some love on her channel and on her website. Make sure you sign up for that newsletter. I am going to be doing that. I appreciate you all being here. And guys, don't forget that we're going to be starting another stream here in just a few minutes.
Yeah,
but
cool.
Tui, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your knowledge with us. And I do enjoy your book so much, and I can't wait to start getting some more.
Thank you for having me, and thanks to everybody who came to the live, and also anybody who's watching the replay. Thanks for watching the replay. Appreciate it. And maybe I'll see you around the interwebs or my newsletter or YouTube or something like that soon. Or a graveyard. I'll bump into you in a graveyard. Who knows?
Thank you guys so much for being here, and be on the lookout for the next one. We'll be starting here in a few minutes, and we will have King Jared TD and Queen Laura. So be sure and check that out. Thanks, guys. Love you guys. Thank you, Tui.
Bye, Debbie.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.